Beneath the Diamond Veil Part 5. Chapter 13, The Blackmail. Evening slipped into Blackthorn Hall on quiet feet, turning the corridors the color of steeped tea. Lamps bloomed one by one behind silk shades. The house wore its night jewelry, subtle lights, polished shadows, a hush that encouraged secrets to speak softly. Harper Quinn stood at her window watching the last thread of daylight pull itself off the gardens. She'd showered to rinse the dust of the vault from her skin, but the memory of those grey boxes and red ribbons clung like a scent. On the desk lay her phone, face down, because she didn't trust the next thing it might say. On the chair, her jacket with the folded century-old page in the inside pocket, a polite weight against her heart when she wore it. She had promised herself she would eat something before whatever tonight meant arrived. She had even ordered a tray, tea, toast, a little silver-domed mystery, and told the house to behave. A soft knock answered her ambition. Not the brisk staff rhythm that said housekeeping. Not the echoing knock from the great front door. A modest, self-possessed knock, 2 gentle taps at her suite. Harper crossed the room, keeping a fraction of caution in front of her like the edge of a shield. She opened the door a careful hand's width. No one stood there. Only a box on the carpet, small, square, wrapped in matte black paper with a crimson ribbon that looked almost wet in the half-light. No card. No tray behind it. No footsteps echoing away. She looked left and right down the corridor. Nothing moved except the pared-down hush. Of course, she said under her breath, because houses like this prefer to deliver their own mail. She carried the box inside. It had the pleasant, unreasonable weight of expensive things. She set it on the desk, untied the ribbon, once, twice, and smoothed it flat on the wood like a line she refused to trip over. The lid lifted without resistance. Inside, on black velvet, something winked up at her with a confidence only stones have, a diamond, not the familiar bright white of bridal pledges, not champagne, not canary, but an impossible red, deep as a pomegranate seed with light trapped inside it like a small, stubborn heart. Even in lamplight it glowed, the color holding like a secret that knows it will be believed. Harper's breath shortened. Red diamonds did exist, rare, whispered about, bought in rooms with no windows. The kind of stone that could pay for a town's new school and still afford a scandalous dress. She did not touch it. Not yet. Under the stone, a folded note lay half-tucked, handmade paper, deckled edges, the fibers visible like pale veins. She slid it free. No typed letters. Ink. All caps, precise and unhurried, the handwriting of a person who believed in control as a virtue. Stop digging or you'll end up like her. The simplicity had its own violence. No flourish, no signature. Just that final pronoun standing like a door she'd already half opened. Her mother. Or Isadora. Or Evangeline. The house had offered her 3 ghosts and now refused to say which one it meant. Harper read it again, because repetition is a kind of armor, and felt the first fizz of anger under her ribs, a sparkling heat that had nothing to do with the lamps. She set the note down, as if putting a creature back in its enclosure, and leaned closer to the stone. Up close, the cut was masterful, fewer facets than a showy stone would boast, proportions disciplined, fire muted to a pulse that felt measured. This wasn't a jewel sent to dazzle. It was a message mounted in light. She glanced at the underside of the lid. A small square of red wax had been pressed there and broken cleanly. The crest sunk into it, the Roth and its thorned wreath, had been smudged by a thumb and then wiped, as if the sender had thought better of admitting too much. Someone wanted her to think this came from Gabriel. Or someone close enough to his world to borrow its seal and its manners. Too neat, she whispered. Too tidy. Try harder. She lifted the velvet pad an inch. Under it, a compact tracking device might have been expected, or a hidden card, or a second note to correct her posture. There was nothing. Just more black paper and a bed designed for the stone. The knock came again. This time, it sounded from the adjoining door, the slim panel that connected her suite to the empty room next to hers. Harper stared at it. The lock's brass knob glinted with a theatrical innocence. "Hello," she said, and the word came out steady because she made it. Silence formed a shape she could feel. Then, a whisper. Not a voice. Paper, thin, sliding. A second note slid under the adjoining door, one corner catching on a floorboard groove, the rest gliding into light like a fish under the surface. She crouched, picked it up. Same paper, same disciplined hand. "We're very generous. When people understand boundaries." A pause, and then, smaller, the kind of postscript a person adds when they want the first blow to keep ringing. "Look in the mirror." Her head turned without permission toward the tall antique mirror on the wardrobe door. For a humid breath she saw only her own reflection, pale, intent, the scar above her brow lit like a crescent of frost. Then her eyes dropped to the mirror's frame. Something had been tucked into the carved scroll at the bottom. She crossed the room, kept her shoulders loose. Pulled the third note free. "We see you. Say thank you. Then pack." She let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Who writes pack?" she murmured, "like they're sending me on holiday." She gathered the 3 notes on the desk, set the red diamond between them like a ruby peony in a bouquet no one wanted, and considered. This wasn't bluster. Bluster wore cologne and used exclamation points. This was a different kind of mathematics. Someone had done their homework, her corridor, her mirror, her schedule, the knowledge that the house could deliver a box to a woman's door without a courier being seen. Her first impulse, call Gabriel, arrived and stood there, expectant. Her second, call Maya, arrived with her better judgment shaking its head. No phones would behave here, no signal held when the house decided otherwise. And bringing an outsider into the hall's gravity felt like dropping a birdcage into the ocean and hoping. Harper did what she always did when a story tried to push her out the door. She poured herself a second cup of tea, cool now, but serviceable, and studied the mess like a jeweler turning a stone to find the flaw. The diamond, too rare to be casual, too vivid to be anything but an announcement. If it was a genuine red diamond, and everything in her said it was, that meant resources, access, and a desire to unsettle with taste. Whoever sent it believed in elegance as leverage. The notes, no fingerprints she could see, no smudges but the deliberate one in the wax. The voice in the lines had training, this was not a thug's grammar. "We're very generous when people understand boundaries." The kind of sentence that has been practiced into blandness in boardrooms. She could hear a lawyer standing behind it like a shadow with a clipboard. And then the line she couldn't get to stop tingling in her hands, "Stop digging or you'll end up like her." Her, who? Her mother, Elena, burned out of an apartment into a headline that never sat right. Isadora, vanished into a river whose surface closed like a clean sheet. Or Evangeline, painted into oil and rescued from memory only to be repurposed as a warning label. The house did not answer. Houses prefer to let you make your own nouns. The adjoining door knocked once more. Tap. Not tentative. Not urgent. A courtesy knock before a trespass. Harper crossed to it and put her palm flat to the wood. Cool, steady. No pressure from the other side. She bent, peered at the gap under the door. A fine dust lived there, the good old dust of rooms that float in quiet. The thread of a shoe print, too faint to be a clue, nudged her attention and then disappeared. Whoever brought the note had not fumbled. Enough, she said, not to the door, not to the notes, but to the part of herself that had been an obedient guest. She opened the wardrobe, pulled out her carry-on, unzipped it, and did exactly not what the note instructed. She did not pack. She made the bag ready to look packed. She placed a silk blouse on top, added a pair of heels, and left the zipper 2 inches open, theater for anyone curious enough to peek. Then she returned to the desk, took the red diamond between forefinger and thumb. Its warmth startled her. It had been sitting in the room long enough to borrow her temperature, and held it up to the lamp. The stone burned like a coal with etiquette. The light entered, turned, and came back as a dyed heartbeat. Generous, she said quietly. Expensive threat. Points for theme. A knock at the main door this time, swift and formal. Harper set the stone back on velvet and opened the door to find Mrs. Langford with a silver tray balanced in perfect equanimity. On the tray, a covered dish, a linen napkin, and, absurdly, a single red rose in a bud vase clipped short, like a sentence with no subordinate clause. Your supper, Miss Quinn, Mrs. Langford said, voice neutral as a polished surface. Poached salmon, cucumber, a small lemon tart. Harper stepped aside, letting the woman enter. You missed your calling, Harper murmured as Langford set the tray down. You could have been a stage manager. I am a stage manager, Mrs. Langford said, unoffended. Her eyes took in the desk, notes lined like soldiers, the crimson ribbon, the black box, the stone, and didn't pretend not to see them. The tiniest inhalation at the diamond, the way people breathe when a cathedral opens its doors. I assume this was not on the standard menu, Harper said lightly. No, Mrs. Langford said. This is not our silver. So we have a delivery boy. Harper leaned her hip against the desk. And a message. Mrs. Langford's gaze moved to Harper's face and stayed. And how do you intend to answer it? With appetite, Harper said, because humor is a way to stop a hand from shaking. Then, softer, with precision. Good. Mrs. Langford's eyes flicked once to the adjoining door, then back. Lock that. I did. And the window. Yes. She hesitated, then reached into her apron pocket and placed a small key on the edge of the tray. It was old brass gone soft at the edges, a key that had known a lot of pockets. For the cabinet in your sitting room, she said. Lower left. What's in it? An object with no sentimental value, Mrs. Langford said. But a practical one. Harper crossed to the cabinet, found the discreet lock, turned the old key. Inside, a tidy first aid kit, a flashlight, and, unexpectedly, a safety whistle on a silk cord, the kind of thing schools gave to new hires and hoped never to see used. Harper picked it up, felt ridiculous and oddly reassured. Mrs. Langford's mouth pressed into a shape that might be read as sympathy by anyone with the right dictionary. This house prefers theater, she said. But sometimes theater steps on a hem. Is Gabriel, Harper began, then stopped. She didn't want to reduce whatever this was to one man's ability to fix a set piece. He is engaged, Mrs. Langford said, choosing the verb with care. Elsewhere. He knows less than he should and more than he wants. Helpful, Harper said dryly. I'm not trying to be helpful, Mrs. Langford said. I'm trying to be honest and employed. Harper almost smiled. You've done both so far. Then let me add this, the older woman said, and the silk around her voice tightened by a shade. If someone gives you a beautiful threat, place it where beauty won't help. Harper looked at the stone. The safe. Not the house's, Mrs. Langford said. Yours. Harper glanced at her carry-on, at the half-zipped theatre of departure. She took the diamond, crossed to the bag, and slid the velvet pad beneath the blouse, next to a rolled pair of socks and a travel-sized hairbrush, mundane chaperones for a rare creature. She settled the zipper back into its innocent gap. Mrs. Langford watched without comment and then lifted the tray's cover as if nothing more interesting had happened this week than lemon tart. Eat, she said. Sugar helps with decisions. Is that medical or spiritual advice? Housekeeping, Mrs. Langford said. She left. Harper stood alone again, the room the same and unrecognizable, the air holding notes of citrus and ink. She ate 2 bites because people do better with blood sugar. She washed her face because a mirror had been made a prop and she refused to let it have the last word. She put on her jacket, slid each century-old page into the inside pocket like a blessing, tucked the safety whistle into her palm, and sat on the edge of the bed to listen for the next cue. It came not from a phone or a door, but from the hall clock 3 rooms away. It struck 9 with that mellow tone old clocks have, the kind that suggests mercy if you earn it. Her phone lit silently. A text from unknown. At the fountain. No pens. She exhaled. Of course the fountain, she said to the room. The house loves an audience. She stood, checked the lock on the adjoining door, the windows, the main door. She slipped the key Mrs. Langford had given her into her pocket and the whistle silk cord around her wrist like a bracelet. At the threshold, she paused. The black box sat politely on the desk, lid off, empty velvet showing like a small stage between acts. The 3 notes lay beside each other, straight as teeth. She turned one over, wrote nothing on the back, and placed all 3 under the paperweight shaped like a laurel wreath. She clicked off the lamps, opened the door, and let the corridor's dim honey light take her in. As she pulled the door softly shut, she heard, clear enough to make a person's skin prickle, a low murmur on the other side of the adjoining door. Not words. Not a voice she could recognize. Just the sound 2 gloved hands make when they find each other. Harper's fingers tightened on the whistle. She walked past the staircase where Evangeline kept her station. Past the blue salon where candles had once behaved themselves. Down the long hall where the pattern in the runner changed and you either noticed or you didn't. At the last turn before the terrace, she stopped. She wasn't alone. A figure stood at the open French doors, backlit by moonlight silvered in the fountain's spray. A woman in a black veil, the fabric fine enough to show the oval of her face and the dark fall of her hair. The posture was familiar in the way certain songs are, elegant, slightly sad, unafraid of being watched. The woman lifted a hand, gloved, of course, and crooked one finger. An invitation. Or a dare dressed as one. Harper stepped into the night air, which smelled like wet stone and expensive quiet, and thought, not for the first time since arriving, that some houses don't need to shout to be heard. They place a jewel in your hand, tuck a note under your door, and wait for you to choose your noun. She chose. She walked toward the fountain. Chapter 14, Confession by Candlelight. The storm had not yet returned, but the air had that feeling, heavy, metallic, alive with the kind of promise that makes candle flames nervous. The night had folded itself around Blackthorn Hall, each window glowing faintly like an ember trying not to die out. Harper Quinn sat in Gabriel Roth's study again, the same room where so many half-truths had already been spoken. Only this time, there was no whiskey, no polite distance between them. Just the low hum of the fire, a dozen candles scattered across the desk, and the uneasy quiet that comes right before a confession you didn't ask for but can't walk away from. He was standing by the window, sleeves rolled up, the glow of the candles catching the line of his jaw. He looked exhausted, not the kind of exhaustion that comes from work, but the kind that comes from running out of places to hide. Harper watched him in silence, waiting for him to speak first. The vault key, Isadora's key, sat in her pocket like a living thing, a pulse against her leg. At last, Gabriel turned from the window. "You've been down there," he said quietly. Not a question. A statement. Harper didn't bother pretending. "Yes." His mouth tightened. "Then you already know what I'm about to tell you. I know there's a vault full of files about women who were connected to your family," she said. "Including my mother. I know it's locked behind a door that's supposed to stay secret. What I don't know is why it exists." He stepped closer, and the candlelight caught the faint tremor in his hand as he leaned on the desk. "The vault isn't what you think," he said. "It's not a collection. It's protection." "Protection," she echoed, incredulous. "That's what you call keeping files on people's lives. Their secrets, their money, their faces. My mother." He met her eyes then, and there was no arrogance left in him, only a sharp, hollow honesty that made her heart lurch. Some of those people needed to be hidden. Some needed to be forgotten. And some, he said, voice lowering, needed to be protected from what my father built. Harper stood, crossing her arms. "And you just inherited the habit." "I inherited the responsibility," he said. "Every name in that vault is someone who crossed paths with my family, people used, ruined, or silenced by them. My father called it a record, I turned it into a refuge. I paid debts he never did. If I couldn't give them peace, I could at least keep them from being erased." Harper's throat tightened. "Then why me? Why was my mother's name in there?" Gabriel hesitated. The fire popped in the hearth, the sound too loud in the fragile quiet. "Because she came too close," he said finally. "She was investigating Roth diamonds 10 years ago. She'd started tracing discrepancies, missing shipments, falsified valuations, a trail that led straight back to this house. My father had her followed. I tried to stop it." Harper felt the floor tilt beneath her. "You knew about her?" "I tried to protect her," he said, his voice rough. "She didn't trust me, why would she? I was a Roth." "The night she died," his voice trailed off, caught somewhere between memory and guilt. "She called me. Once. I didn't answer." The words hit her harder than she expected. "And you thought you could fix it by keeping her in a file drawer?" "No," he said. "I thought I could fix it by keeping the truth somewhere safe until it could be used." She stared at him across the candlelit desk. "You keep saying safe like it means something good." "It means alive," he said, and his tone was so quiet it hurt. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The fire hissed softly. Candlelight shifted across the portraits lining the walls, generations of Roths, all looking somewhere beyond the present. Finally, Harper drew a slow breath. "I got messages tonight," she said. "From a number with no name. One of them said, 'Tell your billionaire I said hello.' The woman on the line claimed to be your wife. He looked at her sharply. That's not possible. She called herself Isadora. Gabriel went still, truly still, like a man who had been struck somewhere invisible. Don't, he said softly. She knew things about you, Harper pressed. About the house, the hollow dictionary, even how you turn your ring when you're thinking. She said you sleep in the library sometimes because you can't stand your bedroom. He sank into the chair behind the desk, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. When he finally spoke, it was the voice of a man who'd been arguing with ghosts for too long. She died 5 years ago, Harper. I was there. You keep saying that, she said, her heart racing. But her name's still in your messages. I heard her voice. She knew everything. He looked up then, and for a flicker of a second, his mask dropped. The anguish underneath was raw, almost boyish. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then make me, she said, stepping closer. Because right now I'm sitting in your dead wife's house, holding her key, reading her messages, and you're asking me to pretend none of it makes sense. He let out a breath that sounded like surrender. Isadora was everything, he said finally. And when she died, I lost the last piece of this place that felt human. But she's gone, Harper. The accident was real. I buried her myself. Then who's been calling me? He rubbed his temple, the motion weary. Someone who wants you to believe she's alive. Someone who wants this house to tear itself apart again. Someone inside the house. Harper asked. He didn't answer immediately, and that silence was louder than any confession. Mrs. Langford, she said, watching him carefully. Langford has kept this house breathing for 30 years, he said. But even she knows things I wish she didn't. The flames in the hearth snapped, sending a soft glow up his face. He looked older suddenly, the lines of his life etched in softer relief. I don't know who's behind the messages, he said. But if you believe she's alive, you'll start seeing her in every shadow. And that's exactly what they want. Harper met his gaze. So you're saying this is all some elaborate illusion? I'm saying the truth here isn't one thing, he said quietly. It never has been. He stood then, crossed to the desk, and reached for one of the candles. His hand shook just slightly as he set it between them, the light trembling with him. Whatever you've been told, he said, voice low, whatever you've found, it's only half the story. The vault, the calls, the past, they all lead to the same place. But that place isn't her. Then what is it? Harper asked. The beginning, he said. And if we open it, neither of us will be able to close it again. The room seemed to breathe with him then, the faint rustle of the curtains, the steady throb of firelight. Harper didn't look away. So what do you want from me? She asked. To trust me, he said. That's a dangerous request, she said, though her voice softened despite herself. He gave a tired, almost tragic smile. Everything worth having is. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off, deep and deliberate, the kind that waits its turn. The candles flickered, their flames bowing for a moment, then straightening again, as though even the light couldn't decide whether to stay or run. And between them, two people surrounded by ghosts and half-truths, the air thickened into something that wasn't quite trust, but wasn't doubt either. Just the beginning of both. Chapter 15, The Charity Gala. The London skyline shimmered that night like it had dressed for its own reflection, glass and gold and endless possibility. Cars slid through the rain-slick streets with quiet arrogance, and inside the Brompton Royal Conservatory, the city's most photographed crowd had gathered for what the newspapers were already calling the event of the season. Every chandelier blazed. Every diamond tried its best to compete with its neighbors. And somewhere among the polite laughter and champagne bubbles, Harper Quinn tried to remember how to breathe. She had never worn anything like this before. The gown was silver silk, liquid in movement, almost indecent in how perfectly it fit her. Its low back caught the light each time she turned, the fabric whispering rather than rustling, the sound of confidence in motion. Her hair was swept into a soft knot, a few deliberate strands framing her face. She looked like she belonged here. And she hated that part of her knew it. Beside her, Gabriel Roth looked every inch the billionaire prince the world had decided he was, black tuxedo, cufflinks that caught the light, the quiet ease of a man used to being watched. He carried that sort of presence that made people stand up straighter without knowing why. Their entrance had been deliberate, late enough to be noticed, early enough to look like they didn't care. As they stepped into the ballroom, a murmur rolled through the crowd. Heads turned. Phones angled discreetly. Someone whispered, "That's her," the journalist, while another murmured, "She's the one he's been hiding away." Harper kept her expression calm, even as the air around them pulsed with gossip and perfume. It was the kind of crowd that thrived on whispered narratives, who was wearing whom, who was buying what, and who had finally stepped into the role everyone had been saving for them. "Smile," Gabriel said under his breath as they descended the marble staircase together. "I am," she replied through a barely there grin. "You look terrified," he murmured, amusement flickering in his eyes. "I'm a journalist," she said. "Not a trophy." "Tonight," he said softly, "you're both." It should have irritated her. Instead, it landed somewhere unsettlingly close to a laugh. They reached the bottom of the stairs. Cameras flashed, not paparazzi, but patrons' phones pretending to be casual. The air smelled like roses and expensive nerves. A string quartet swelled in the corner, and the ballroom lights glowed a little too brightly, making everything look airbrushed. Waiters glided through with trays of champagne and miniature amuse-bouches no one actually ate. Gabriel leaned in slightly, his voice smooth. "I need to greet the trustees." "Stay close." "I wasn't planning on joining the fan club," Harper said. "You already have," he replied, giving her a look that lingered a second too long before he moved toward a knot of silver-haired board members. Harper stood for a moment, letting the room breathe around her. The crowd was a gallery of perfection, satin gowns, cufflinks, diamonds so bright they almost hummed. Yet beneath it, she could feel it, the tension, the watching. She'd covered enough of these events as a reporter to recognize when the air was charged with unspoken stories. A passing waiter offered her a glass of wine, deep crimson against the pale stem. She accepted, letting the stem rest cool against her fingers. "Miss Quinn," came a voice behind her, smooth, amused, touched with too much curiosity. A woman's voice. Or should I say Mrs. Roth? Harper turned to see a tall woman in emerald satin, her smile practiced to perfection. "Not yet," Harper said, polite, unbothered. The woman's smile sharpened. "He always did like strays," she said sweetly, and drifted away before Harper could decide whether to laugh or spill the wine down her gown. Gabriel reappeared a moment later, eyes scanning her face. "Who was that?" "Someone whose name I don't need to remember," Harper said. He smiled slightly, though his hand found the small of her back with quiet possession. "Then she's not important." "Tell her that," Harper said, tilting her head toward the balcony above, where movement caught her eye. A figure stood half-shrouded in shadow on the second-floor balcony, overlooking the ballroom. A woman in a black veil. Not a costume. Not part of the staff. A deliberate apparition. Harper froze. The air seemed to thin around her. "Gabriel," she said quietly. "Look." He followed her gaze, and went completely still. The veiled woman didn't move. Didn't flinch. She simply watched. Even at a distance, there was something too familiar in her stillness, the calm, knowing way she stood as though she'd seen all this before. The candles on the chandelier flickered once, twice, an odd glitch in a room powered by nothing but luxury and order. "Isadora," Harper whispered. Gabriel's hand tensed at her back. "Don't," he said sharply. "I saw her," Harper insisted. "She's right there." But even as she said it, the ballroom lights shimmered again, a flicker like the room had blinked, and when she looked back, the figure was gone. The balcony was empty. Her chest tightened. She was there. Gabriel's jaw locked. "We're leaving." But before they could move, a waiter brushed past, tray rattling slightly from the sudden dip in the lights. Harper's hand jerked, and her wine glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the marble floor with a sound too sharp for such a polite room. The deep red wine splashed upward, streaking across her white silk gown like a wound blooming in real time. For a second, she couldn't breathe. The sight was too symbolic, too theatrical, too deliberate. Every head turned. Conversations faltered. The string quartet hesitated mid-bar. Gabriel was the first to move. He knelt, catching the shards before they could cut her hand. His voice stayed calm, but the muscle in his jaw worked. "You're bleeding," he said, reaching for her wrist. "I'm fine," she said automatically, but a thin line of blood traced her palm where a shard had nicked her. A perfect smear of red against the white sleeve. He took a napkin from the nearest waiter and pressed it to her hand. "You're not fine." "Don't make a scene," she hissed softly, aware of the eyes on them. "Too late," he said. His tone wasn't teasing now, it was fear, disguised as control. From the balcony above, she thought, for just an instant, she saw the faintest shimmer of movement again, the edge of a black veil disappearing through a side door. Harper's pulse thundered. "She's here," she whispered. Gabriel looked up sharply, following her gaze, but the doorway was empty once more, the crowd closing in with murmured concern, white gloves and whispers and the metallic tang of spilled wine in the air. "Come with me," he said firmly. He guided her toward a side corridor off the ballroom, his hand steady against her back. She let him lead her, partly because she wanted answers, partly because she didn't trust her legs to make another decision. The music in the ballroom resumed, faint and false behind them, as though the scene had already been cleaned away, rewritten as an accident. They stepped into a quiet anteroom lined with mirrors and orchids. The light was softer here, flickering gently over gold frames. Gabriel turned to her, voice low. "Someone wanted to rattle you." "Or you," she said. He looked at the blood on her hand, his expression unreadable. "They've succeeded at both." She reached into her pocket, feeling the silver key cold against her palm, Isadora's key, heavy and silent. Who was she, Gabriel? He didn't answer immediately. The fire from the ballroom caught in his eyes, making them glow faintly amber. "I told you," he said finally. "She's gone." Harper shook her head. "Then why does she keep showing up every time the lights flicker?" He didn't answer, just looked past her reflection in the mirror to the ballroom beyond, where the chandelier light glowed too bright, too warm, as if it knew something they didn't. Behind them, through the double doors, the laughter rose again, elegant, oblivious, desperate. But the spilled wine on the floor, that stain like a signature, would not fade. And from somewhere above, unseen, a soft voice whispered her name. Once. Then gone. Chapter 16, The Woman in the Veil. The cold outside felt deliberate, a London night kind of cold, the kind that cut through silk and confidence alike. The city glimmered wetly under street lamps, rain turning the pavement to glass, and the steady hum of late traffic filled the air with a sound that somehow felt too alive for what Harper was about to see. She didn't remember making the decision to follow the veiled woman, only that 1 second she was in the gilded anteroom, and the next, she was moving. Past startled waiters, past the doorman trying not to stare at the woman in white with blood on her sleeve, through the conservatory's sweeping entrance of mirrored glass and marble columns. The night hit her like a truth that had been waiting its turn. Ahead, half shrouded in fog and lamplight, the veiled woman walked with steady, unhurried steps. She moved the way people do when they know they won't be caught, not running, not hiding, simply leading. Wait. Harper called, but the word disappeared into the hum of the city. The woman didn't turn. Harper quickened her pace, her heels clicking too loudly on the wet pavement, her heart hammering with that electric rhythm that lives somewhere between terror and discovery. She followed the veil through the narrow lane beside the conservatory, where the streetlight flickered, throwing silver onto the wet cobblestones. The woman turned left into a small mezzanine courtyard, one of those tucked-away corners of London where the modern world forgets to look. Stone benches, ivy, a broken clock mounted above a shuttered cafe. The air smelled faintly of rain and jasmine, the same scent from the fountain at Blackthorn Hall. The woman stopped near the fountain's twin, smaller, older, its basin filled with rainwater. "Isadora," Harper whispered. The woman turned, slowly, like the movement itself was a form of acknowledgement. And then she lifted her veil. The fabric fell back in a graceful sweep, revealing a face that shouldn't have existed anymore. Isadora Roth. Very much alive. Her beauty wasn't untouched, it was the kind that had been through fire and learned not to flinch. Her skin was paler than in the photos Harper had seen, her dark hair shorter, her cheekbones sharp with survival. Her eyes, deep hazel with flecks of gold, carried the quiet of someone who had stopped believing in easy answers. "Hello, Miss Quinn," she said softly. "You're quicker than I expected." Harper's throat went dry. "You're supposed to be dead." Isadora smiled faintly, a tired thing with no triumph in it. "That's what makes conversations like this so exciting." Harper stepped closer, scanning the woman's face for some kind of explanation. "I saw your name in the vault. I saw the accident report. I saw your husband bury you." "Yes," Isadora said simply. "He needed to." The air between them shifted, not quite trust, not yet accusation. "You faked your death?" Harper asked, incredulous. "I survived it," Isadora said. "Faking was a luxury I didn't plan for." Harper folded her arms, the city's damp chill threading through the thin silk of her gown. "Why reach out to me?" "Because you're the first person in years who's close enough to see him as he really is," Isadora said. "And because you still believe the truth will save you." Harper blinked, caught between anger and disbelief. "You make that sound like a flaw." "It is, in this world," Isadora said. "In his world." She looked out toward the street, where headlights washed pale light through the mist. "You think Gabriel is a good man with dark corners. But you're wrong. He's a dark man with good moments. There's a difference. Harper's jaw tightened. You don't know him anymore. Isadora turned back to her, and for the first time, her composure cracked just slightly, something fierce and sad in her expression. Don't I? I know what he keeps in that vault. I know what he does for people who cross him. And I know the cost of loving him. The vault's for protection, Harper said quietly. That's what he told me. Isadora laughed, softly, without humor. That's what he told me too. That's what he tells himself when the guilt wakes him in the night. Protection from what? From himself, Isadora said. From the legacy he refuses to destroy. Every deal, every jewel, every file in that vault, it's a wall he builds to keep the past contained. And the women. They're bricks in it. Harper flinched. You're saying he uses them? I'm saying he needs them, Isadora said. He collects women who make him feel clean. Until they see what's underneath. Harper looked away, jaw tightening. You're trying to make me hate him. No, Isadora said, stepping closer. I'm trying to make you leave before he breaks you the way he broke me. There was no venom in her tone, just weary certainty. You think I don't know what it's like to love someone dangerous? Isadora continued. To believe you can be the one who fixes the rot in them. I did that. I thought love could bleach the stain. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belongs to people who have buried their younger selves. But love doesn't cure power. It just decorates it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city sounds dulled, replaced by the steady drip of rainwater from the fountain's edge. Then Harper said softly, if he's what you say, why warn me at all? Why not let me find out the hard way? Isadora studied her. Because I still see the woman I used to be, she said. And I can't watch her die twice. Harper exhaled, her breath misting in the cold air. You're lying, she said, though her voice faltered halfway through the sentence. Isadora didn't argue. She just stepped closer until Harper could see the faint scar near her temple, the one no photograph had ever shown. He'll tell you it was an accident, Isadora said quietly. He'll tell you I died on that bridge. Ask him why the car was registered in another woman's name. Ask him why there was no autopsy. Ask him what's really hidden under the vault. Harper's chest tightened. Why should I believe you? Because you already do, Isadora said gently. And that's what terrifies you. They stood in silence, the mist swirling between them. Then, from the street behind them, a low rumble, the growl of an engine idling too long. A black car, tinted windows, headlights dimmed, waited at the corner. Isadora's eyes flicked toward it, then back to Harper. I have to go, she said. They'll notice I'm missing. Who? Harper demanded. But Isadora was already lowering her veil, the movement graceful and final. Don't go back to the hall tonight, she said softly. Not until you decide whose truth you want to live in. Isadora. Tell Gabriel, she said, stepping backward into the mist, that not all ghosts stay buried. And then she was gone, swallowed by fog and the low hum of the waiting car, which slid away into the London dark as if it had never existed. Harper stood there, alone, in her ruined gown and trembling silence, the city's breath curling around her. She looked down at her hand, the cut from the shattered glass still faintly red. Gabriel's ring, she realized, had been missing from his finger at the gala. And somewhere behind her, a clock struck midnight, steady, echoing, cruel. The night swallowed the sound whole.
Because every broken heart deserves a comeback. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional romance every week. Hit like, drop a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of romance, redemption, and powerful love. And don't keep the drama to yourself, share this story with someone who lives for twists just like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best comeback is becoming unforgettable.